So in this section, we'll go over how to build the project for production. So we can't just directly build our development build right now. We have to make a few changes. The very first thing we have to do is update our auth file. So since this project is going to be running on a public IP address, we will need to add that IP address to our auth0 allowed callback URLs. So let's copy the public IPv4 from our EC2 instance and then paste it here in our auth0 dashboard. So we're going to need to add the IP address to both the allowed callback URLs and the allowed web origins. And now let's add our client ID to our project. And then we're going to need to change the redirect URI to our public IP address /callback. Since again, we're not running this in localhost anymore, since this is going to be a production build. Now we can actually set up our React production build. So to do this, we need to open a terminal in the client directory of our app we've been building, and then run the command npm run build. This will create a build directory that we can deploy to our server. Because again, we're not running this in localhost, so there is no create React app or npm start as a development option. We deploy a build directory that contains files that are then sent to individuals in their browser, which is how they run the app. So we can now cut and paste this build directory to our server directory. So now our project is one app. We no longer have a separate server and client app. Our entire app is just one directory now. And this is essentially how we're going to run it in production. Because again, we're not going to run two separate apps in a production build. That would not work. So to overcome this, we combine both our React app and our Express server into one app. And now we need to make a few changes to our directory structure to make our app function properly. So the first thing we have to do is cut and paste the entire contents of the www file into our app.js file. And then we can also delete both the bin and www file. And since we don't have that file anymore, we have to go in our package.json, and then for our start and def start commands, we have to run app.js now instead of the www file. So we can do this here. So in the beginning of this section, we built our React project and we had this build directory, but I didn't really go over what this build directory is. So I'll do this here now. So as you can see, we have a couple of directories and a few files here in our build directory. So I'll go from bottom to top. We have service worker.js at the very bottom. This is essentially how we set up a progressive web app. And I'm not going to go too deep into progressive web apps right now, but it's basically how we use a website offline, how we allow our users to use our website offline. And just a brief description of how it works. It's essentially when our user first visits our website, all the code is downloaded and saved in cache. And when they want to revisit our website, instead of having to re-download all the code for our site, they simply access it from the cache that's already saved by the service worker. And that's essentially how progressive web apps work, and that's the purpose of the service worker.js file. And actually the pre-cache manifest and also the manifest.json both are responsible as well for the progressive web app functionality of React, and that's the purpose of these three files. Index.html is our main HTML file, and this is essentially what the server responds with to our client user. So our Express server will respond to user requests that visit our website with this one index.html file. And again, since React is a single page application, this one HTML file is all we need. And all the code for our entire website is going to be in this index.html file, which itself contains our entire React app. And this is different from other traditional web apps, such as those built with PHP, where you need a different HTML file for every web page. So this would be equivalent to having a separate HTML file, for example, for each of our components in React if we were using a traditional web app. But again, since we're using single page apps, this one indexed HTML file is all the server responds with and what the user downloads in their browser. After that, we have the favicon.ico. This is the basically icon that you see in your web browser on the tab. So on most websites, on your tabs, there's a icon next to the name of the website. And this is essentially what a favicon.ico is. And asset manifest.json, again, has to do with progressive web apps. And then we have our JS directory. And this essentially contains all of our React code. So if we click on main and then a bunch of letters and numbers, this is our React project. If you click on this, we actually see some recognizable code. So this is essentially what React Build does. It takes all of our components and then deletes all the white space. Deleting all the white space makes your app smaller and thus faster to download. So this is essentially what happens when you run npm build. And of course, our CSS directory just contains our CSS with the white space deleted. Okay, and let's go back to our app.js file and make a few final touches. We actually need a new function to actually run our app in production. So do if process.env.node.env equals production. So process environment equals the production environment. And of course, Node will know this automatically behind the scenes that we deploy to a production build. We'll first do app.use express static build. So this is essentially saying our build directory will be served as a static asset, meaning JavaScript is considered a static asset, so it will be served from our build directory. Next, we have app.get, and then we do /star, meaning all the routes. We do rest.sendFile, and then path.resolve directory name, build index.html. So what this is saying, for every route, serve the index.html file. And our index.html file is in the build directory, so we connect them with the path.resolve dir name command. And again, /star, meaning every route. Every route serve the index.html file. Since again, React is a single page app, we only have one file to serve. So this is what we do. And by doing this, we allow navigation inside of our React app. Because again, remember, in a traditional web app, we would not do this because every route we would request a separate HTML file. And React, of course, does not work like that. So by doing this, we allow for navigation with the React router. This is how we can navigate inside of our app. Since we're not requesting a separate HTML file for every route, then we simply serve this one route, which allows us to navigate within our app without having a separate HTML file for each route. So this is essentially what this function is doing. And now we want to make app.js the root file. So let's move it out of the main directory and place it in our root directory. And now, because we did this, we have to change our routes path to ./main/routes. And we can also get rid of this command here. We don't need this. And since we combined our www file and our app.js, we don't need this require statement here either. And to avoid conflicting this app with other apps, let's change our port from 5000 to 5010. And we don't need either of these commands here either. And this is it really. We have successfully set up our React app for a production deployment. And even though this is a production build, we can actually run it in localhost by running it through our Express server. So again, remember, in our previous development build, we were running both the Node server and React app separately, and they were able to communicate with each other through a proxy. We've now built our React app and we have it here in our Express server. And remember, we're serving it as a static asset, a JavaScript file. And this means we should be able to just run the Express server and have our React app work through our Node server. So let's try this. Let's delete this if statement and just set it to true so we can just run it in our local host. So let's do npm start, which starts our node server. And let's go to localhost 5010. Because again, this is where our node server is running. And there we go. We see our React app here in our node server localhost. So this is how we do it. This is how we run our React app through our Express server and have it run as one app. And you can see in our console, we are being served the static assets, meaning when we request a route, we're getting served our React app in the browser, which allows us to see it here. And this is it. Our React app is working with our node server.